Hello, I'm your host Jim McClean. Welcome back to Banterflix, where each week we talk about some of the movies and shows you might want to seek out and those you might want to avoid. Let's see what we'll be talking about tonight. We'll continue to look back at 3 different summer blockbusters within the same director's back catalogue, and this week it's the turn of cult filmmaker Tim Burton. So that's what we've lined up for you this week. Joining me in the studio as our summer specials continue is the lovely Jess Blair.
I do.
And Dr. Nicole Hamilton.
Hey.
Now, as I say, we're continuing to look back specifically at one director's summer blockbuster back catalogue. So we've already done Steven Spielberg, we've done James Cameron. This week we're moving on to Tim Burton, a filmmaker I love. I genuinely love from when I was young, because it was that kind of creepy edge that you just get from Burton's films. So I'm going to open it up. Before we talk specifically about our 3 films that we've picked, generally, and I'll start with you, Jess, are you a fan of Tim Burton? Where does he rank for you as a director that would get your attention if a new film was out in the cinema?
As a former goth kid, I feel
Are you
like
ever a former goth kid?
it's never a phase, but
It's a way of life.
as a former outwardly appearing goth kid, it would be sacrilegious not to see a Tim Burton film when it comes out. I do have a bit of a love affair with the man and his back catalogue.
I say this in each of these specials. We are talking about 3 films, and I guess we'll throw in references here there to other films within his back catalogue. We just don't have time within 28 minutes to talk about every film, so I'll say it from the get-go, we're not talking the likes of Beetlejuice on this week's show, and I guess there's a lot of love for that. Beetlejuice, no, I'm not going to make that mistake, not going to say it for a 3rd time, maybe I will, we'll have to wait and see. But Nicole, what about you? Where does Tim Burton rank for you and kind of your love for all things cinema?
There is a time in my life where I probably would have called Tim Burton, if not my favorite, one of my favorite directors. Especially throughout my teenage years, I feel like if you grew up in a certain era, Tim Burton was just it for you, especially if you were a former goth kid, or I was slightly more emo leaning myself. And there's something I feel like about his films that just speak to you if you have those sorts of inclinations, particularly like The Corpse Bride, Beetlejuice, Edward Scissorhands, these like really tragic, less tragic in Beetlejuice's case, but sinister and tragic films.
When I think of Tim Burton, I think of sinister.
Exactly. And if you're emo goth leaning in any way, I think that sort of thing, just you gravitate towards it. You're gonna love it regardless. He's fallen slightly out of favor for me the last maybe 10 years or so. I haven't made as much of an effort to see his films, and I think they've strayed away slightly from the aesthetic and the tone that I personally love from him. So I wouldn't count him as one of my favorites now, but if as we will go through his filmography, it's banger after banger after banger. Like there's a good 15 to 20 years where pretty much every single film is fantastic.
And I think, if I'm correct, without giving the game away, I think one of the films that we've picked this week you hadn't seen before.
Yes, just one.
Okay, so we have that. We'll keep you on tenterhooks for that. So without any further ado, let's play a clip of Jess's choice, and then we will talk about the film.
Welcome to the factory.
Warner Brothers invites you to enter a whole new world, unlike anything you've ever imagined,
It's beautiful.
where dreams are your reality.
Look over there.
They're Oompa Loompas.
Back off, you little freaks.
I do say that all seemed rather rehearsed.
You're really weird.
And Willy Wonka
Let's boogie.
is your guide.
Ew.
So that's a look at Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, 2005. Johnny Depp given a Michael Jackson-esque kind of take on Willy Wonka. I know there's connotations with that, but rewatching it, that is the closest kind of comparison I could think of. I will say from the get-go, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory just hangs over this film like a massive cloud. Now, looking at Rotten Tomatoes, which of course is the foundation of all knowledge for all things cinema, this does get a higher rating than I thought it would. I think it's 83, so it's considered fresh, not rotten, which I was surprised at because I am not a huge fan of this, but I come back to that opening statement. For me, it's because Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, Gene Wilder, the iconic vision of Oompa Loompas, very different than what Tim Burton serves up. So why, Jess, was this your, not quite your first choice, but your second choice when we talked about summer blockbuster Tim Burton?
You have to go back. Growing up with Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, and, Gene Wilder is Willy Wonka. However, as a kid, I loved Roald Dahl's book, and when you read as a kid's book, it's slightly creepier than you think. It's quite sinister. A lot of kids coming out of very unfortunate accidents that, today would result in a lot of claims on that factory being shut down.
Accidents, as you say.
Accidents. I felt that Charlie and the Chocolate Factory nailed that sinister mix of sweet candy bright goodness.
Oh, you see what you did there?
With the macabre really, really well.
But Roald Dahl did not like the original version of that film.
Exactly. I feel he would have liked this. I feel it got that nail on the head a little bit better with that sinister edge with Willy Wonka. Again, I'm going to go back to kind of talking about my goth days as well. A big sell for me on this was in the lead up to the film, they were obviously asking Johnny Depp, how are you preparing for this film? It feels very off-centre for what type of roles you normally do. It even felt very off-centre for Tim Burton. I remember the lead up to this, a lot of kind of questions about really that he's going to do Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. That's, such a childish film. How could you make this kind of Tim Burton-esque? And I can remember reading from Johnny Depp that one of his inspirations for his character was Marilyn Manson. The singer, Marilyn Manson. And just being...
I don't know that many Marilyn Mansons.
Yeah, well, you never know. But, it felt so intriguing. To sort of see, you've taken such, yes, a kind of sinister, dodgy character from the original film and the books, but you've picked someone quite sinister to edge yourself on here. And I just remember going in and seeing it in the cinema and just adoring it. I thought they got the kind of drama of it a little bit better than the original film did, because obviously the book's going to be so much more fantastical. It's a children's book, the animations in it by Quentin Blake. I feel like you've seen those drawings a little bit better in the 2005 Tim Burton. It just had that air of the fantastical that I think Tim Burton does incredibly well all the way through it, and it just worked for me. I appreciate it's a very kind of Marmite film for people, but I don't know, it just was up there for me. I just really enjoyed it.
I wished I liked it as much as you. I genuinely do. And I don't know what it is, why I don't like it. And I think it's that sense, you mentioned, Jess, that you didn't think that would be a good mix for Tim. I remember thinking at the time, if anyone's going to do an interesting take on Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, it's going to be Tim Burton. And maybe I went in at the time with too high expectations. I've rewatched it a couple of times, watched for this week's show. It still doesn't grab me, and it's very low for me within his back catalogue. That's why I was so surprised to see that it gets as high a rating as it does on that fountain of cinematic knowledge that is Rotten Tomatoes. Nicole, what about your inner emo? What was your thoughts on all things Charlie and the Chocolate Factory?
I am sort of middling on this one. I really liked it as a kid. I was a big Roald Dahl fan as a child. I still have the books that I originally read. Roald Dahl was very, very, very important to me in my reading journey as a kid. And Charlie and the Chocolate Factory and The Great Glass Elevator were really important to me, and particularly the books rather than... I loved Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, but it was the book that was just it for me. And I remember going to see this in the cinema and being really excited, and I did love it. Subsequent watches, it has gone down a wee bit in my estimations. There's something a wee bit too shiny and bright about it. And I think that's part of the point. And I see why that works for some people, because it is like a veneer that gets shattered as things get stranger and stranger. But it gets a little bit too uncanny for me, to the point where I'm like, how do you not all know that this is extremely strange? And it's very heightened. It gets very silly. which the book and the other film does as well, but there is just something that's a little bit grainier about the original film and about the book that it just works a bit more for my sensibility. So I still do like this film, but it doesn't
Do you think,
hit.
like Jess, Roald Dahl, you know, we're talking hypothetically here because he had passed by the time this film was released, but do you think he'd be more a fan of this as he was quite openly very critical of the original Gene Wilder?
I think probably, because I do actually think that it does adapt the book better than Willy Wonka does. I think it captures that.
Even the Oompa
Strayed.
Loompas?
Well, Oompa Loompas, well, maybe that's a
And their
cultural point that we maybe
outfits.
don't need. I think like it's such a strange film because it really is just like the costumes, I think, that have stood the test of time in terms of what people remember aesthetically about it. I don't know very many people that if you brought up Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, the Oompa Loompas are the first thing that most people would think of. And I don't know that that's a good thing. Or the dentist scene. The Oompa Loompas and the dentist scene are pretty high up there, I think.
I do like Christopher Lee's little cameo in this, but I
Christopher Lee's
can't
cool.
remember, and I feel I have two people who will judge me very quickly. I don't think that Christopher Lee backstory, it's been a long, long time since I've read the book. I don't know if that backstory, is that originally from the book or is that a Tim Burton creation?
I actually don't remember.
Well, I feel glad that I've stumped you both. So there we go. If anyone's watching at home, be sure to message in. I am nearly 100% certain that is a Tim Burton creation. I do like that because it's just nice to have Christopher Lee on screen and Christopher Lee and Tim Burton. It's like Johnny Depp and Tim Burton. It just goes hand in hand. But look, mixed feelings on our first dip into the director's back catalogue. Let's move on to our second choice, which is mine. Let's have a look at the trailer before we chat about the film.
Mr. President, we're going to need to get you to safety.
Should we go this way?
Sorry, ma'am. There's a tour going through here.
Jack Nicholson.
This is the President of the United States. I want the people to know that they still have 2 out of 3 branches of the government working for them, and that ain't bad.
Glenn Close as the First Lady.
I'm not going to have that thing in my house.
So that's a look at Mars Attack, 1996. So this will be its 30th anniversary this year. I know that as we record, there's a lovely new 4K restoration re-release on Blu-ray that just looks fab. And if my lovely wife will allow me, I will definitely add it to my physical media back catalogue. So it's available online. You can watch it, as I say, get out the DVD, get the Blu-ray. Like me, I remember going to see this in the cinema. I am that old. But I'm going to start with you, Nicole, because you hadn't seen this before. And now I can't remember in terms of the chronological order. I think there was Mars Attacks and then Ed Wood's, or it could have been the other way around. I'm not sure, but those are two films for me are up there with Tim Burton. I adore now, in the weird sense that when I watched this the first time around, I didn't get this. I wasn't overly fussed on this, but I think I was just too young. I wanted my Independence Day alien movies. Rewatching it now, I forgot what an impressive ensemble cast it is. A fantastic cast. Even Tom Jones popping up. Even Tom Jones popping up in as good a cameo as you will get, even in from up there with his cameo in The Simpsons. That's the level that we're at. But you hadn't seen this before, so I'm really intrigued. What did you think of Mars Attacks?
I had a great time. I didn't actually know very much about Mars Attacks. I have seen a still of the aliens, and that was pretty much it.
I am doing a lot of kind of self-control not to do an impression of the aliens from Mars Attacks.
I think you should.
No.
So that was literally, I mean, I presumed that the aliens were from Mars and that they would in fact attack.
Well, the clue was in the title, not to be that person, not to mansplain, but I think the clue was in the title.
So that's about as much as I knew. I didn't even really know who the cast was. I knew Jack Nicholson, but that was basically it. And went in fairly blind, and just sort of couldn't believe my eyes at how strange some of it was. I really miss whenever Tim Burton was this weird. I was just doing things that you wouldn't imagine anybody would do on the big screen just because he could.
Yeah, and it is that throwback to that old kind of classic 1950s, 1960s B movie, the kind of stuff that Ed Wood would love to make as good a film as this. Like, I had forgotten from rewatching for the show, the opening. I knew there was a sequence. I apologize. It's the opening scene, so it's not a spoiler. I knew there was a scene featuring cows on fire. I had forgotten that was pretty much the film's cold opening when we see that. Because when I turned it on, when I put it on, I was watching it online on a streamer, and I thought, oh, have I been watching this previously and this has been the middle of the film? It's like, no, that is the opening of this film, cows on fire, and, you know, someone making a joke saying, do you smell barbecue? You know, yes, that's the level we're at with Mars Attacks. So I am glad that you had fun with this. And were you impressed? And I know we're going to come to you in a second, Jess, but it is such a good ensemble cast. Michael J. Fox is in there. Sarah Jessica Parker is in there.
The stuff with Sarah Jessica Parker, I cannot describe what my reaction was, because nothing could have prepared me for what my eyes witnessed. Nothing.
Nothing could prepare me for how gorgeous Pierce Brosnan looked.
True, yeah.
And Jack Black, quite buff. A young, buff Jack Black.
There were so many people that, like, as the credits were rolling, it was just, oh. Like, I just was continuously shocked at the amount of people that were in it, and who clearly, like, some of which weren't that famous at the time. So it's one of those situations where you're like, you see the name in the credits, you assume, oh, that's going to be a big person, and then they die really quickly, and it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, as I say, a really good cat. The likes of Pam Grier as well. Natalie Portman in that kind of post-Leon phase, I guess. Still a very young Natalie Portman in there. Jack Nicholson, as you mentioned, doing the kind of Doctor Strangelove 2 roles pretty well, I have to say. And I will throw some love to Glenn Close. I had forgotten how fun this film was, and just that fact that when I first saw this, when I was a teenager, was not focused. It was too weird. It was too kind of, what is going on? I'm sorry, what? Why is that dog? What's happening, without going into spoilers? Jess, let's go back to your former goth self. 1996. You a fan of Mars Attacks?
I am, and I adored it. It was one of those films I seen probably a little too young, hiding kind of behind the sofa while my parents watched it on a rented Extravision video back in the day. And just being fascinated. And I think the weirdness is just what makes it so perfect. It's one thing to go in, and obviously, like you said, the name's in the title, Mars Attacks. You're still going to be surprised watching this film. You know it's an alien film, you know it's an alien invasion film, but you're never in a million years going to guess to the end. You're just not. There are scenes from it that forever stick in my memory as well. Now, again, whether I was from watching it as a kid, but without going into too much detail, the gum scene, I have an inordinate fear now. Not that I would ever be in that weird situation
of Martin Short.
Yeah, to like get gum out of someone's mouth, because I just remember that being so freaked as a kid. But it is just so fantastically wonderful, and it is Tim Burton at one of his finest points of just that strange, subversive, you're taking a well-known sci-fi kind of trope and just go completely left field. And it works so well, and it stands up so well. And it was actually, I'd seen it again for the first time in a long time, a few years ago. And I remember seeing Jack Black going, Jack Black? And being so thrown by it. And I think it has that nice novelty factor too. Now kind of watching when you're seeing more of these stars and kind of realizing who they were in it. And it's just a wonderful, fun film.
Yeah, it was a real joy to rewatch it. And like you've mentioned there, I'd forgotten just how much of kind of a pop culture icon I think Alien Girl, I think, is what she's classified in the IMDb classifications, that other cinematic encyclopedia of all things cinema. But yeah, I forgot. I think that's Lisa Marie, who is a bit of a kind of muse to Tim Burton and given her that role. Just from that sequence, the way she moves around on screen, and then you just have, again, I say, Martin Short, just a really good ensemble cast. If you've never seen Mars Attacks, seek it out. As I say, there's a lovely new 4K restoration out with a lovely steelbook cover with the alien girl in the front. So as I say, if my lovely wife will let me, I will add that to my collection. Now, let's move on, wrap up this week's show. I think there was a bit of, shall we say, gentle arguments about who was going to get this as their pick. Nicole, you have chosen not on one of the few, I think, Tim Burton sequels that we have here. I guess that pretty much, there's not that many. We'll give the bit of the game away. But let's play a clip of the trailer and then we'll talk about film.
The only one who can save this city is a creature of the night.
Hey, stud. I thought we had something together.
We do. While she craves a romance she can sink her claws into.
You're catnip to a girl like me.
So that's a look at the trailer for Batman Returns, 1992, sequel to the mega successful Batman 1989 that kind of set the kind of benchmark. I guess we look at all the kind of MCU stuff, the DC universe that we've had, and now we have rebooted again. I know earlier in the summer we had Supergirl out in cinemas, but this is very much comic book movie, Tim Burton. You know, the first one was very much true to Frank Miller. This is just Tim Burton. The Tim Burton verse, I think, is what it's been dubbed. The Penguin, Catwoman, Michelle Pfeiffer, woo-wah-wee-wah. I'll get there before you do, Nicole. And just a director being allowed to kind of go off and do his own thing with a franchise that we haven't really seen. Probably the only thing I can think of late would be when Taika Waititi did what he did with some of the Thor movies. Once quite successfully, second time a bit of a, oh, Taika, we're not angry, we're just disappointed. So Batman Returns, this was your choice. Nicole, take it away.
So I love Batman. I just love Batman. That's it. That's the whole thing. I have loved Batman since I was a kid. Batman the Animated Series was one of my favorite things. I became very, very obsessed with Harley Quinn when I was about 12. I'm just building a picture of the type of child that I was.
Very different from the emo phase we were thinking of earlier.
Oh, it was so different. You would never connect the two things at all. This film is the culmination of every single thing that I want Batman to be. It's dark, it's stupid, it's weird, it acknowledges the weirdness and understands that Batman lives in a world that makes no sense to anybody else, but it makes sense to him. And it makes sense to them.
Penguins strapped with rockets.
Exactly. What else could you want? The Gotham in my head is a very strange one, and it's one that I think fits better if you're a comic book fan, more with like the Elseworlds comics, just rather than like super hyper realist Gotham that I think Christopher Nolan does well, but it's not for me. I like the stupid and the weird and the dark. And Tim Burton obviously excels at all three of those things.
And because we have like a forest park setting, Nicole, there's creepy Tim Burton trees.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The trees, they always make an appearance.
There we go.
Every time.
This is what I love about this film. I remember going to see this in the cinema. There's a sense that it was so different from the 89 version. It's like, how do you top that? It's like, let's Tim Burton come in and do his own little take on it. And I know people have dubbed it the Burton verse now, and it's, as someone who fell out of love with the Burton Batmans and kind of find myself falling head over heels with, I know you call him Christopher, I like to call him Chris. Chris Nolan's Dark Knight and that gritty take on Batman, kind of particularly the Dark Knight, where it's like a Untouchables, kind of like a big, great kind of Heat-esque crime drama. And then I guess over lockdown, actually, during the pandemic, went back and rewatched those films and have fallen back in love. And it's not just because I'm a man in my 40s and Michelle Pfeiffer is wearing that cat suit. Hey, I like to think of myself as modern and kind of chilled, but sometimes the old inner 15-year-old boy in me comes out. But look, yeah, I adore this. It's so much fun. I think of it almost, I know it was released at summer, I think of it now as a Christmas movie. And it's a Christmas regular, it's on repeat viewing up there with Die Hard for me in our household. Jess, I know we're pushed for time. Batman Returns. What have you got to say about it?
It is the Batman film, and it's the hill I'll happily die on. I love the Nolan trilogy. It's, you know, dark, nitty gritty, wonderful, but it's a completely different viewing experience. And to me, Tim Burton's take on this is what comics are and should be. It's just got that wonderful blend of just weird and action and comedy and darkness. The Penguin is just perfection. That like just an incredible comedic villain, but still frightening. They have that just really good blend of the kind of comedy and horror with them. And to me, it's just, when I think of Batman, that's the film I see in my head. Now, whether it's because it's obviously one of the very first ones I seen as a kid, and that's what I grew up with, I don't know. But I think it's one that truly stands like the test of time. It has that just, I feel like I'm going in circles, just it's just got that blend, because it's really hard to kind of elaborate on that, because it is just so perfectly well done. And I think you need to see it and try and forget Nolan's, because it's two worlds apart. And I find it a little unfair when people try and conflate those two Batmans. They're two entirely different takes. Take them for what they are. And let's all just agree that Burton got it right.
Okay, you're being very forceful there, Jess. I like it. I'm a little bit intimidated by it. You know, as the former goth girl, you know, yes, ma'am, is what I'm going to say to that. I would agree, though. We haven't even got this far, and I know we're going to wrap up. Christopher Walken as well as kind of like a dark, twisted take on Bruce Wayne. I know that there has been, in comic books, there's been sequels that have featured that and have been much more Burton-esque. So yeah, if you've never seen Batman Returns, well worth a watch. And even just, again, we haven't got this far, Michael Keaton, just that great kind of take of a madman in the bat suit, as mad as the people, as the villains he's supposedly going up against. But look, that is us out of time this week. And I know we've mentioned, as I say, my chum Christopher Nolan. That's who we're going to be wrapping up our series of summer specials with. We may possibly have a reference to The Dark Knight. Who could possibly predict? But that's for next week. For now, all that's left for me to do here in the studio is thank my two guests. So thank you very much, Jess.
Thanks, Jim.
Thank you very much, Nicole.
Thank you.
Thanks very much for watching at home. We'll be back next week, as I say, with our Chris Nolan special. But for now, until then, goodbye.